Today we turn the page on a different kind of warrior. Not one who swung swords or wore shining armor, but one who moved entire armies with a sentence. A man who mastered war by mastering silence. You've seen his name before. On book covers, in boardrooms, whispered in locker rooms, or printed on mugs that say things like, "Know your enemy." But behind the cliches is something deeper, something older, someone real, or at least someone real enough to echo across 2,500 years of history. This is the story of Sun Tzu, a strategist, a ghost, a philosopher of war whose words ripple through every kind of battlefield, military, political, personal. So settle in, dim the lights, let the wind rattle through the bamboo screens of your mind, and let's begin the quietest conquest of them all. Your story begins around 544 BCE. You are born as Sun Wu in the ancient Chinese state of Qi. China, at this point in history, isn't unified, not even close. It's a patchwork of competing kingdoms, each one with its own ambitions, armies, and ancient grudges. This era is called the Spring and Autumn period. But the name is misleading. There's not much blossoming going on, unless you count the growing number of wars. In reality, it's a time of fragmentation, paranoia, shifting alliances, and endless skirmishes. Peace is not the norm, it's the exception, a temporary silence between one campaign and the next. And you? You're not a prince, you're not a warrior, you're not even a noble, you're an observer. While the sons of generals train with halberds and chariots, you study something else. Patterns. You begin to notice what others miss. That armies don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they hesitate. Because they expect the battle to unfold like the last one did. Because they rely on muscle more than mind. You realize early what most commanders never do. War is not chaos. War is structure. A sequence of moves and missteps, like a game. And games can be mastered. As you grow, you become obsessed with questions. Why do men panic when the wind changes direction? Why does morale collapse faster than the body? Why do powerful armies collapse under the weight of their own ambition? You begin to write, not for fame, but for clarity. Your scrolls are not heroic tales. They're blueprints, dissections, autopsies of failure. You learn not from victories, but from collapses. And in doing so, you begin to build a new kind of warfare. One that doesn't begin on the battlefield, but in the mind. Eventually, your reputation begins to spread, not with fanfare, but with whispers. The kingdom of Wu, a rising but not yet dominant power, hears of a man who speaks like a poet, but thinks like a trap. They invite you to court. There you meet King Helu, cunning, ambitious, always watching. He wants to test you publicly, perhaps hoping you'll fail. So he gives you a challenge. Train my palace concubines, he says. Not as entertainers, as soldiers. It's a joke, a trap disguised as a task. But you don't laugh. You accept. You split the concubines into 2 units. You assign them leaders. You give simple commands. They giggle. You repeat the order. They laugh again. And then, you have the 2 commanding women executed. The king is horrified, but you stand firm, because you don't teach discipline with speeches. You teach it with certainty. The joke ends. The experiment becomes a lesson. And King Helu sees what you are, not a performer, a general. From that moment on, you command real troops, real campaigns, and real victories. The kingdom of Wu becomes feared, not because of its size, but because of its strategy. Because it begins to act unpredictably, calmly, efficiently. And you continue to write. Because the sword cuts once, but words, if chosen well, cut forever. You begin your military career not with the largest army, nor the best weapons, but with the clearest mind. The state of Wu, once seen as a second-tier power, starts to win battles that no one thought possible. Under your guidance, they take bold risks that somehow don't feel risky at all. You guide them, not like a warlord, but like a weaver, pulling threads of weather, morale, terrain, timing, and intelligence into a net that entraps much larger forces. It isn't long before you become one of the most feared minds in the region, and you don't raise your voice to be heard. Your silence says more than a general's shout ever could. The most famous of these campaigns is the Battle of Boju. You help Wu launch a daring river-based invasion against the powerful state of Chu. Wu's forces are smaller, but faster, more coordinated, more aware. They march further than they should. They strike harder than expected. And within days, they capture the Chu capital. You show the world that speed and psychology can overcome size and steel. That confusion is a weapon if used correctly. That the enemy's expectations are more vulnerable than their shields. Other generals start studying your methods. Kings want to know what you'll do next. But they don't realize you've already done it, because the battle was won before it began. But even at the height of your victories, you remain strangely absent from the spotlight. You don't write speeches. You don't demand titles. You remain in the background, calm, watching, adjusting. You care more about systems than glory. While others look for fame, you look for leverage. And this is when you begin writing what will become your legacy. 13 chapters of concentrated clarity. A book unlike any other in military history. You don't call it My Great Victories or Sun Tzu's Commandments. You call it something much quieter, much sharper. The Art of War. It is not a book about killing. It is a book about not needing to. You write, the greatest victory is that which requires no battle. You write, appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. And also, know your enemy and know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. These are not tactics. They are principles, not for one fight, but for every fight. You speak of the 5 constant factors: moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method. You speak of formation, movement, and momentum. But most of all, you teach perception, awareness, the subtle art of never showing your full hand. And as you write, your influence expands, not just through armies, but through generations. And this is where your identity begins to blur. Some claim you never existed. That Sun Tzu was a name given to a school of thought, not a single man. That the art of war was compiled by multiple strategists over decades. Some point to the writings of a man named Sun Bin, a possible descendant or perhaps even a confused version of you. Others insist you were real, that the discipline in your writing could only come from lived experience. But even if you were partly myth, the ideas are solid, enduring, and maybe that's the point. You weren't writing to be remembered. You were writing to be useful. Centuries pass. Dynasties fall and rise. The book outlives its author by hundreds of years. It becomes one of the 7 military classics of China, read by emperors, monks, and samurai. Your words cross oceans. In Japan, feudal lords study your chapters before battle. In Korea, tacticians read you by candlelight. In Vietnam, your influence shapes whole revolutions. Eventually, your scrolls are translated into dozens of languages. By the 20th century, generals across the world keep copies by their bedside. Mao Zedong reads you before launching his guerrilla campaigns. U.S. military academies assign your work as required reading. Business leaders quote you in PowerPoints. Sports coaches use your insights in locker rooms. Spy agencies annotate your verses. Even chess players find wisdom in your words. But the most profound effect of your legacy is this. People begin to understand that war is not just blood and noise and victory parades. It is patience, discipline, timing, self-awareness. You make the world realize that conflict is not about overpowering others. It's about managing risk, emotion, energy. You tell them, If your enemy is angry, irritate him. If he is united, divide him. If he is secure, prepare against him. You teach not just how to win, but how not to lose, and sometimes how not to fight at all. And perhaps what's most remarkable is that your book, written thousands of years ago, still applies today, in boardrooms, on political stages, in personal arguments, in moments of decision. You taught that clarity is strength, that restraint is power, that seeing clearly before acting is what separates the fool from the master. You didn't just write about war, you rewrote what people thought it meant. You didn't need a sword, you didn't need a throne. Your power was your insight. Your empire was made of words, and those words still move through the world, quietly shaping the choices of people who've never heard your name. You taught us that victory is not always loud, that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who says nothing. You are Sun Tzu, the invisible general, the quiet philosopher of war, the whisper behind every well-timed move. And that was your life.